Everything's fine. Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Okay, the talk this afternoon will be based on, with continuing the series on the Sutta Nipata, so will be based on a sutta in the Mahavaga, that's the long chapter of the Sutta Nipata. This is called the Kokalika Sutta. The sutta must have been regarded as particularly important because it also comes in the Samyutta Nikaya and in the Anguttara Nikaya. So it occurs 3 times in the Pali Sutta Pitaka. And the story concerns a monk named Kokalika, who one day he comes to the Buddha with a complaint about Sariputta and Moggallana. The way it's translated here, in this particular translation, he says, Sariputta and Moggallana are full of unwholesome desires. They have been quite taken over by unwholesome desires. This is a somewhat mild translation. The actual text says that Sariputta and Moggallana are papicha, papikanam ichanam vasam kata, which means that they're full of evil desires and that they've come under the control of evil desires. Okay, so first, who are Sariputta and Moggallana? Sariputta and Moggallana were the 2 chief disciples of the Buddha. They were regarded as respectively the right-hand man and the left-hand man of the Buddha. Sariputta was the disciple who excelled in panya, in wisdom. And because the Buddha's teaching itself was based on the Buddha's own perfection of wisdom and the wisdom that constantly flowed out in his teaching, so the Buddha appointed Sariputta to the position of the foremost disciple in wisdom. Moggallana was the disciple who excelled in the exercise of psychic powers, supernormal powers. He had very, very powerful samadhi, and through the power of his samadhi, he could perfect particular faculties of the mind that could perform feats that go beyond the range of our normal comprehension. Through his perfection in supernormal powers, he could travel easily to other world systems, to other realms of existence, and talk with the beings there. He was able to make his body, with one body, to multiply his body so that he could be seen in several different places, even many places at the same time. He would be able to pass through mountains, through walls, through solid barriers, just as though the way we can walk through air. He was able to dive into the earth as though diving into water, to fly in the sky like a bird. So all of these powers Moggallana exercised mastery over all of these supernormal powers. And because the Buddha also possessed these supernormal powers and was able to use them as skillful means in teaching, the Buddha appointed Moggallana as his second chief disciple, the one who was foremost in Iddhi, or Siddhis, the psychic powers. Now, whenever the Buddha would go off into retirement, into retreat in order to practice meditation, he would entrust the control of the Sangha to Sariputta and Moggallana. He would say, I want to go into retreat. Sariputta and Moggallana, you take the leadership of the Sangha. Whenever the Buddha would be giving a discourse, Sariputta would be sitting on one side of him, Moggallana on the other side of him. Okay, so throughout the Buddha's teaching career, Sariputta and Moggallana were his constant companions. And then when Sariputta and Moggallana both passed away shortly before the Buddha passed away, the same year, but earlier in that year. And after they both passed away, sometimes the Buddha would look out, when he was giving a discourse, he would look out at the community of monks. And as a Buddha, he doesn't experience any sadness, but it's almost as if his mind was touched by a very delicate degree of sadness. He would say that it's just like we might have a big tree, a tree with solid hard wood with many branches, and there would be two big branches of that tree. And one passes by that tree day in, day out over many years, and one always sees that tree looking very much the same. But then one day, maybe there's a thunderstorm, one of these big branches gets hit and knocked down, and it vanishes. Maybe a few months later, there's another thunderstorm, and the other big branch gets knocked down, and it's gone. Then, when one passes by that tree, one sees the same tree, but how different does it look when both of these big branches have been knocked down? And so the Buddha says, when I sit here and I look out at this community of monks, I see two big empty spaces, and the spaces occupied by Sariputta and Moggallana. So in this way, Sariputta and Moggallana were the foremost disciples of the Buddha. And yet, this monk by the name of Kokalika comes to the Buddha and reports to him, Sariputta and Moggallana are full of evil desires. They are under the control of evil desires. Why does Kokalika speak in this way? In the canon itself, the Pali canon, one doesn't find any background incident to this case of slander or calumny, but the commentaries to Sutta Nipata, to Samyutta Nikaya, provide a background story. And when I relate these background stories, I always have to attach a little proviso or qualification. Stories that come in the commentaries, sometimes they're useful and illuminating, but they're not always trustworthy. So I just tell you what the story is, and then I will tell you another story, another background story. The background story that comes in the Pali commentaries goes like this. On a particular occasion, Sariputta and Moggallana decided that they needed or wanted to spend a period. You see, in South Asia, we have a 3-month period called the Vasa, which means literally it's the rainy season. This is the time when in India, Sri Lanka, other Southeast Asian countries, the rain clouds arrive, and then over this period, heavy rains will fall. And it was typical in India during the Buddha's time for the ascetics belonging to the different schools, religious schools, would stop their normal wandering and dwell in one fixed residence so that they don't have to go traveling around during the rainy period.